Welcome to another Explainer. Today, we're diving into the sheer scale and fascinating mechanics of India's electoral system. Now, when you hear the phrase the world's largest democracy, you probably immediately picture massive, bustling crowds and super colorful rallies, right? But behind all that incredible energy is a highly structured, meticulously designed constitutional machine. We're going to break down exactly how that machine actually works, looking at the precise legal and logistical frameworks that keep the whole shebang running. So let's just dive right in.
We're going to anchor our exploration right at the very core of this entire constitutional ecosystem, universal adult franchise. What does that mean? It's simple. One person, one vote, equal power. This is absolutely the bedrock. Regardless of someone's background, geography, or socioeconomic status, the exact moment a citizen turns 18, they're granted the fundamental right to have a say in their future. It's an incredibly powerful equalizer, but, like all big systems, it does operate within a specific set of rules.
So here's our quick roadmap for today. First, universal adult franchise. Then we'll look at the Election Commission, Parliament's direct and indirect systems, how top leadership is elected, and finally, the real-world challenges to free elections.
Okay, Section 1, Universal Adult Franchise. Who actually gets to participate?
While every citizen 18 or older generally has the right to vote, the law actually sets some pretty strict boundaries. Minors and non-citizens are out, naturally. But the legal nuances here are super interesting. For instance, if you're in prison, you cannot vote. However, there's a specific, weird exception that allows people under preventive detention to vote using a postal ballot. Add in disqualifications for things like corrupt electoral practices or simply failing to register, and you quickly realize that voting is just as much a conditional privilege as it is a right.
Right, so now that we know who's playing and who's sitting out, let's jump into Section 2 and introduce the Election Commission, the referees of democracy. Meet the ultimate institutional referees, the Election Commission of India. Set up back in 1950 as a totally autonomous constitutional body, this three-member team holds absolutely colossal power. I mean, they don't just count the votes, they literally build the arena. They're managing immense voter rolls, assigning official party symbols, and crucially, they enforce the model code of conduct to ensure fair campaigns across every single level of government. With our referees in place, let's head into Section 3, Parliament, direct versus indirect. Two houses, two totally different systems.
Just think about this number for a second to grasp the massive logistical effort here. 543. There are exactly 543 elected members of parliament in the Lok Sabha. These 543 individuals are chosen directly by the people. They represent the immediate democratic will of the voting public across individual constituencies nationwide.
So, India's parliament basically relies on a dual mandate to balance power, and it's a brilliant contrast. The Lok Sabha, the lower house, is the immediate voice of the people. It uses a direct, first-past-the-post system where citizens vote directly to form the union government every 5 years. But then you have the Rajya Sabha acting as the federal anchor. It's a permanent upper house with 6-year terms, but it's elected indirectly by state lawmakers using a single transferable vote. This setup perfectly ensures that individual states always maintain a really powerful voice at the national level. Moving on to Section 4, electing top leadership, the president and the vice president. Let's escalate the stakes here.
The way India chooses its president is basically a masterclass in checks and balances. The president is chosen indirectly by a really exclusive electoral college, made up of elected MPs and state MLAs. But here is a truly genius constitutional mechanic: weighted votes. To make sure massive states don't just entirely silence the smaller ones, an MLA's vote value is mathematically tied to their state's 1971 population. Meanwhile, MP votes hold a uniform value across the board. It's this incredibly complex proportional system that requires a strict quota of over 50% to win, meaning there's no way anyone is taking the presidency with just a mere plurality.
Now, check out how this builds a totally different kind of mandate for the vice president. The subtle but absolutely crucial difference here is the makeup of the Electoral College. For the VP, the electorate consists exclusively of members of parliament. It includes both elected and nominated MPs from both houses, but it entirely excludes state MLAs. And unlike that complex weighted math in the presidential election, every single MP's vote here carries exactly equal weight. It's a strictly parliamentary mandate.
If we look at this matrix, you can literally see how the barriers to entry scale up as the office gets higher. While a 25-year-old can run for the Lok Sabha with a relatively small deposit, reaching for the highest executive offices requires you to be at least 35. And more importantly, you can't just wake up one morning and declare yourself a presidential candidate. You actually need 50 electors as proposers and another 50 as seconders. The system is intentionally designed this way, to filter out the noise and ensure only highly supported, serious candidates make it to that final ballot. So we have this beautifully intricate, mathematically precise constitutional design. But what happens when it hits reality? Section 5, Challenges to Free Elections.
The truth is, the Election Commission is effectively fighting a massive multi-front war on the ground. On one front, they're battling serious malfeasance, the rampant spread of unrecorded cash, freebies being used to buy votes, and the incredibly frustrating inability to disqualify candidates who are merely accused of crimes rather than convicted. Then, on the logistical front, the hurdles are just as steep. Imagine managing accurate voter lists for over 1 billion people without accidental deletions. It's a constant crisis, compounded by tens of millions of internal domestic migrants who literally just can't travel all the way home to cast a ballot. Add in the fact that the Model Code of Conduct is essentially a gentleman's agreement rather than strict, punishable law, and the sheer weight of pulling this off becomes pretty staggering.
Understanding all these mechanics leaves us with one final, pretty profound thought to chew on. We've seen the flawless logic of the constitutional design, the carefully weighted votes, the brilliant checks and balances, the rigid criteria. But we've also seen the massive friction it encounters in reality. So, in a system tasked with mobilizing hundreds of millions of voters across a vast subcontinent, is a truly flawless election actually possible? Or is managing the world's largest democratic exercise inherently just a constant work in progress that requires endless adaptation? It's a question that really sits at the very heart of how we govern ourselves. Take that thought with you, and keep questioning how the systems around you are built. Thanks for joining this explainer.